This apple tea cake is melt in your mouth delicious. It was a handwritten recipe given to me a while back and I've made it numerous times, and being the heavy-handed cook I am, the original recipe called for 3 apples, but I doubled it always. And what happens is the apples sink and create a beautiful apple layer in the cake. And also today I want to show you a really simple and yummy dessert that takes 10 minutes to prepare and 15 to 20 minutes in the oven. It's really good. And this is how it goes. In case you don't know, I made a website a while back, and if you just type leescooking.com in the web browser and scroll down a little bit on the home page, there is always the recipe for the latest video. And then if you go up the top and click on recipes, in the search bar you can search for an ingredient or a recipe, and you can print them out or just view them online, and they are always accurate. Sometimes making a video is a little bit of work and I get a bit muddled and I may say the wrong ingredient in a video, so it's always best to check the recipe on the site. So the first thing to do is preheat your oven to 170 degrees Celsius with a fan, or 190 degrees Celsius without a fan, so just a moderate oven. So into a bowl I put 180 grams of soft butter, and if it's straight out of the fridge you can just soften it quickly in the microwave. And then I add 1.5 cups Australian of caster sugar, which is 185 grams, and it seems like a lot of sugar, but I'm using Granny Smith apples today, and Granny Smith apples are a bit sour, so it actually really balances out. And so now what I do is cream this well. And you'll always know when butter and sugar are creamed enough because it will change colour, it will become whiter in colour and be light and fluffy. Then I beat in 3 room temperature eggs, one at a time. Then 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Now the recipe only calls for 1.5 cups Australian, which is 225 grams of self-raising flour. Now if self-raising flour is not available, just use the same amount of flour plus 3 teaspoons of baking powder. And I like to sift this, just makes the cake a little bit lighter. So you'll also need 1.5 cups of milk, which is quite a lot of milk, and this is what makes the cake so delicious. So just add in, say, half the flour, half the milk. The rest of the flour and the rest of the milk. Now I've made this countless times and it always looks a bit curdled. Doesn't matter if I put the flour in first or last, doesn't matter, room temperature eggs, it always looks curdled. I've just come to the conclusion that that's exactly how it should be. And it's a very loose batter. So I have a 23.5 centimetre springform pan here, 23, 24, 25, they all work. And I'm just going to spray it away from the camera with a little bit of spray oil. And for this cake in particular, it's important to line it because it does cook for quite a while in the oven. Something like that. And I'll pour the batter into the cake tin. I'll just set that aside for a moment. I have 800 grams of Granny Smith apples here. And these ones I peeled a bit earlier. The key here is to slice them really thin. You can use a mandolin if you've got one, or just a knife. So the thinner the better actually. And you'll end up with all those apples. And what I do is just layer them on top of the cake. Now the apples are going to sink, so it doesn't matter if they are overlapping and look pretty because you're not going to see them much anyway, and especially because I covered them with cinnamon sugar. And I put a few more apples around the edge than in the middle. So as you can see, a lot of apples. But because the cake batter is so thin, the apples sink and become part of the cake. It's really cool. I have 3 tablespoons of just caster sugar in that bowl, to which I add a good tablespoon of cinnamon. And that's a nice strong cinnamon sugar. And then sprinkle that evenly over the top of the cake. And when handling the spring form, be careful just to hold it from the side so the bottom doesn't lift out. And now I'm just going to put this in the preheated oven. Now this could take as long as 70 minutes. I'm going to check it after 50 minutes because sometimes I just need to cover it if it's browning too much on the top. So this has had 50 minutes and I want to show you what's happening if I can. So all the apples have sunk into the cake, and if I put a skewer in it I can feel it already. The cake is really not done, but it's starting to go brown on top. I'll just pull it out a little bit more. I don't want it to deflate. And so now I'm just going to cover it with a bit of baking paper. So I'll put it on for another 15, maybe 20 minutes. I'll check it in 15 though. And in the meantime, I just want to show you this really quick and simple, delicious almonds and apples for dessert. And goodness knows where I got this book from, but it's an Epicurean book. And I saw this here and I thought it looked so delicious that I thought I should make it, and I did, and I've made it a few times and it's really lovely. It's simple, and you know what? You can use pears if you don't like apples. They would work beautifully. Really, really easy, and this is dated 1992. So first of all, I just make the topping, and it's super simple. Into a saucepan, a small saucepan, I just put 75 grams of butter, 75 grams of caster sugar, 60 grams of flaked almonds, 1.5 tablespoons of plain flour. In my case, I'm using gluten-free plain flour, and 75 mils of cream. You could use a quiche dish or a pie dish. I just happen to have this pretty dish here, and I just butter it generously with butter. And you'll need as many apples as you can fit in there, but what you want to do is peel them and either halve them or quarter them, and I'm going to try and use this apple corer. So I'm 59 years old and this is the first time in my life that I've ever used an apple corer. Oh, that works well. I got this from the supermarket for a few dollars. I was a bit off centre there. I'll try another one. Oh yeah, perfect. If you don't have an apple corer, you can try and take the cores out with a knife, but usually at work I just cut them into quarters and arrange them on the dish. But I thought they might look nice in halves today. So I'm just going to go and peel these apples. And I'll cut them in half. Apples discolour so quickly, so I think, you know, it's good if you can at least get the ingredients ready for the topping, or even bring the topping to the boil first if you're a quick peeler. And then I just put these apples in the baking dish, and I think I'm going to need a couple more apples because you want them all quite snug. Maybe another 2. Juggle them around a little bit so they all fit. That should do. Lovely. So now I heat up the mixture I made earlier and basically just bring it to the boil Stir in frequently over a moderate heat. When it comes to the boil, it's ready. So just take it off the heat and pour it over the apples, coating each one of them. Now this goes into a really hot oven, 225 degrees Celsius conventional without a fan, or about 200 with a fan, and for between 10 to 15 minutes. They're really funny baked apples, so between being undercooked and ready, sometimes it can just be a moment, but you want them nice and tender. So I cranked up the oven to 200 degrees Celsius with a fan, and I'm going to put these in and check them in 10 minutes and see if they're tender. But I think they'll take more like 15. So that's been 10 minutes. I'll just see how it's going. Now they're still quite hard. I'm going to put it on for another 10 minutes. Oh yeah, perfect. Be careful, it's really hot. So that took 25 minutes in my oven, and the apples are just tender. They're lovely. I'll just brush over a bit more of this sauce. This is so yum. I really hope you give this one a try because it's such an easy and quick dessert. And the recipe suggests serving it with whipped cream, or I suppose you could serve it with custard or ice cream. Yum. Three's nice for a serving, I think, with some of that beautiful sauce over them. And a bit of whipped cream on the side. Let me see if I can show you how tender they are. They're just like, they're so tender. They're poached in that caramel. And together with the cream, they're so good. Oh, that's yum. And you know what I've done? I've put this mixture in between the powder puffs and whipped cream before, and they were so good. But I cut the apples up smaller so they sort of mulched. So a few minutes before the cake is ready, I just made a quick cinnamon sugar, and this time just 1 teaspoon of cinnamon and 3 teaspoons of caster sugar. And I've also melted just like 2 tablespoons of butter. So this has actually had 75 minutes in the oven, and if I put a skewer in, it comes out clean. Now what I like to do is take that melted butter and put it over the top, brush it over the top of the cake, so it soaks in while it's still hot and permeates through the delicious cake. And you see, there's no apples on top. They've all gone in the middle of the cake. And just for a final hit of deliciousness, I sprinkle over that cinnamon sugar. Now I'm going to leave this in the pan before I remove the sides for about 15 minutes. Well, until the pan's cooled down enough so I can safely remove the sides, and that gives the cake a chance to settle a little bit. So this has had more like 20 minutes. The tin's still warm, but it's time to release it. Looks lovely, smells so good. If you try and cut it now, which I will because it's super hot still, you have to cut a big piece because it's so fresh. If you let it cool down, you can cut them a lot smaller. I just want to show you how good it looks. But it's so fresh and hot. And you know, you can cut them neater if you let it cool a bit, but that's cake and the apple layers, all the apples have sunk and the cinnamon has sunk. What's it look like on the other side? The same sort of thing. It is always so well received, this cake, when I make it. And what's extra yum with it is a good spoonful of whipped cream. It's equally delicious cold or warm. And you know, it is so full of apples that you could even serve it as a dessert. And look at that. That's a good one with the layers of apples. So I did make a version gluten-free, but I added 1 teaspoon of psyllium husk powder, and this is the one time where I think I shouldn't have, because it actually made the base a little bit custardy. Well, like an egg flanny type consistency instead of a cake consistency. So next time I make this gluten-free, I'm just going to do a 1-to-1 swap with gluten-free self-raising flour or gluten-free plain flour, and then the 3 teaspoons of baking powder, but no psyllium husk. But I tell you what, it still tasted delicious. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy one or maybe both of these recipes, and I hope to see you again soon.